So,
It
oh, we're
looks like
live.
we are live. Hi everyone. We're live. Hi everybody.
All right. So, welcome back to another episode of Today, the Backstory. And that's Chris, and I'm Tim, and we're two retired history teachers.
Yeah.
So, Chris, how's it going?
It's going pretty good. Spring is in full bloom here, although the bloom is not really blooming. It's sort of like gray and kind of brown out there. And I was skiing 2 days ago. So if you want winter up here, you can find winter still. But right now it
Uh,
sort of looks like spring. It looks like the creek is open. There it is.
Downhill skiing or Nordic or,
Oh, cross country skiing. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Nordic
yeah,
skiing. Nordic
yeah.
skiing, fantastic. And snowshoeing too.
There you go. All
So if
right.
you
So,
want winter, you can find it.
right. I thought we were the only place.
Yeah.
All right. So, what's on the docket for today?
Well, we're going to take a close look at the recent election in Hungary. The Basically Viktor Orban was in power for 16 years, and there was a landslide victory by Peter Moder, the opposition candidate, and it's an amazing example of how an autocratic autocratic government that's been entrenched for a long time for a lot of reasons can be overturned. So that's what we're looking at today. Many
Right.
aspects.
Yeah, so that's part of the reason why it's a big deal and it's in the news and so on
Yeah.
is to bring back some or hopefully bring back some elements of liberal democracy and and another reason why it was such a big deal was that when Orban and his party won the election in 2010, that was a shock to the system, and it was the catalyst for a lot of the ethnic nationalist, Christian nationalist parties, both here in North America and in Europe. And so there was a lot of people watching the UKIP in the UK and France and Germany, and how those parties started doing better after Orban took over. And then, of course, there was Brexit and Trump. And so the momentum has continued off and on towards growth amongst these conservatives. And it's really, it is very concerning for the two of us. And of course, things aren't over, but perhaps this election um, is a catalyst for momentum's changing back.
I think, yeah, I absolutely agree. I believe that the recent election, the overturn of the Orban regime, is a bellwether for liberal democracy
Right,
worldwide.
right,
Very, very closely watched. And I think what we're going to do today is we're going to give you the reasons why it's a bellwether and why it matters in the US, why it matters in Canada, why it
right.
matters across the Western, and it matters to countries that are emerging democracies as well. Okay, I'm going to jump right in here. So here we
Yeah.
go. Hungary, Eastern European nation, very culturally diverse, a rich cultural history. I have a number of Hungarian friends up here who I consulted prior to this, so I hopefully can get some of the pronunciation and the names correct.
Right.
Um, with lots of sort of deep historical kind of, they said, how far back do you want to know about Hungarian history? And I was like, well, we're talking thousands of years back. So just like it's sort of it's another one of
Right.
these. It's another one of these countries. It's got a very deep history.
Roots.
So yeah, big time roots. But if we go back to Soviet era Hungary, if we
Mhm.
go back to Soviet era Hungary post World War II, you've got a country that is pretty much locked down, state media, everything's centralized, everything's controlled, and also you've got a secret police. You've got the state using the implements of the federal state against the people. You've got a secret police, so you've got brutal oppression. And of course,
Yep.
people will note the 1956 uprising in
Oh.
Hungary, right?
Mhm.
Where there was an uprising, a pushback for our democratic reforms in the country, and of course, the Soviet tanks showed up,
Yep.
and yeah, they showed up in the capital, and they crushed. Believe there were over 2,000 deaths, and it created actually 200,000 refugees. Hungarians fled into
Right.
other countries following it.
Yep.
So I guess the reason I bring that up during that time period is because Hungarians know struggle,
Right.
right? They're no stranger to it,
Right.
and they've had to live under repressive regimes for quite some time, and have
Yep.
worked really really hard to fight their way to for having some more democratic freedoms.
Yep.
So following the Soviet era, sort of key, if you think about key characteristics of what the country looked like, Hungary was an amazing emerging democracy. It was actually looked at like, and I'm talking of following the Soviet era and into um, prior to 2010, right? That's a
Hmm.
big block of time, I realize. But Hungary was looked at as an emerging democracy, and actually an example of how you can go from an autocratic country
Right. To
to to a democracy. And just a couple of quick things that they had: super strong institutions, a constitutional court, a free judiciary which is neutral and apart from the federal government. Media as well, many different media outlets, and not media that was no longer controlled. And another really interesting part was that between 1990 and 2006, every sitting government was actually voted out of office during every election cycle. So if you think about just
yeah.
that going on in Hungary, there obviously was a free and fair election system, right, where
Right.
no one.
Uh, and
Go ahead.
many Americans would recognize how big of a deal term limits, right? And that's a controversial here, and I'm sure there too. And but but yeah, when you use that phrase, it brings up some understanding. And I would like to highlight a point that you just made, because
Yep.
people ask me what's the difference between democracy and liberal democracy, right?
Mhm.
And the short answer, right, is obviously they both have democracy where there's universal voting and basically the consent of the governed. The liberal part, as you know, is the rights and the due process and the freedom of speech and the freedom of the media, the things that you have to have in order to have democracy.
Yeah.
And so every once in a while, our listeners might hear the term illiberal democracy, and that's what Orban and others have had, where they've taken away the rights, but then continued elections. And
Yeah.
even who was the Venezuelan
Maduro
government? Well, and yeah, Maduro and
and Pryor. Yes.
yeah, yeah, the name will come to me. But anyway, win the first election, shut down the rights and the accoutrements of liberalism, and and then just keep winning elections. Different, and that's different than previous authoritarians, right? They wouldn't
Yeah.
even have elections.
Yeah, I know.
Anyway,
Like, yeah, Hungary. I mean, Hungary goes. It's interesting that prior to 2010, Hungary is seen as a model again of how to go from
right,
a liberal, or how to move like from the Soviet era
right,
into
s-
an actual liberal democracy.
right.
So you know and I think they were ranked as an emerging democracy somewhere like around 30th in the world in terms of freedoms, just basic civil
Out of
liberties,
180 for those keeping score.
out of
Yeah,
180. Okay,
yeah.
so Victor Orban campaigns against corruption in Hungary. This is during the 2000 campaign. Now, listeners might
Right.
also be interested in knowing that he was also prime minister for a term in 2003, and
but
then he
not
was. Yeah, yeah,
but
and
not as illiberal.
no, but not as an illiberal. And so then, when he went out of power, he and his team and his political party, Fidesz, basically looked at, okay, well, what can we do to not only get into power but to stay in power? So this is what happened during the 16 years, and it's interesting to note that it was 16 years because during those 16 years, and I said that Hungarians are very used to being in the fight for
Right.
democracy, in the fight
Right.
for freedoms, right?
Right.
But it took
Hmm.
16 years, and in the 16 years, this is basically what happened. So it was a systematic dismantling of institutions, judicial independence gone, they're
Right.
they're
So,
just
and again, just
yeah,
for hooks that people
yeah,
hang their quote on, you're talking about after Orban took over, won the election in 2010,
yeah,
and took over the government as a nationalist, right?
yeah,
And he started changing the government away from liberalism.
yeah. Yeah, this yeah,
Yeah. Go
absolutely
ahead and
occurred.
start again. Can you say them
No,
again,
no,
please?
no, it's okay. I'll absolutely start again. So he
Yeah.
basically judicial independence. So if you think about what that is in our countries, you think about how independent is our Supreme Court? How independent are the state courts?
Right.
How independent are the kind of the in the civil court system, right? So
Hmm.
basically, the court system is stuffed with loyalists, right? To
Yep.
government, right? The Constitution gets changed, right?
Right. Oh
So
my God.
the Constitution gets changed because Fidesz and Orban has a two-thirds majority in Parliament, and he passes a new constitution which completely restructures their legal system, and it creates all kinds of advantages for Fidesz to stay in power longer. We'll get into that later. Key institutions, for example, the state, audit office, the prosecutor general's office, the central bank, um, all kinds of different institutions like this are now kind of controlled by the government. They're just stuffed with loyalists.
Yeah.
Does it? I wonder if this sounds familiar, right?
Well, right.
Right. So media control.
Aspirationally.
Yeah, media concentration, right? So the ruling party basically takes control of most of the public and private media outlets, right? In fact, they install a giant state media, which pretty much gives everybody the news as they want people to see and understand. For
They meaning the government.
yeah, 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 absolutely. Journalists are harassed by the government, right?
Right.
And they're monitored, and journalists die, and
Yeah.
so this goes on. The electoral system is rigged, gerrymandering, changing electoral boundaries,
Yep.
making it harder for people to vote, voter manipulation. There's also they also put this law in called winner compensation, and I'm going to read this one. The electoral law was changed to favor larger parties, allowing Fidesz to secure supermajorities even when receiving less than 50% of the vote.
Yeah.
Is your head spinning yet, Tim?
Oh my gosh. The super majority.
Right. Yeah, they're not really the supermajority through the popular vote, but
Right.
they're the big ones, and so they're going to get more money and a better ability to stay in power. Suppression of civil society and pluralism. And Tim, can you help us out with the term pluralism?
Oh yeah. I was afraid that you were going to ask me to help you with civil society, which I could take a stab at. I think I
Yeah.
could get, but pluralism is basically cultural and racial diversity.
Right. Absolutely.
Is that too short of an answer?
No, that's a brilliant answer, which is
Yeah.
key to having a civil society where in
And
a
if
civil
you
yeah,
and just thinking about how I need to clarify something, um, the, many nations, particularly the United States, have racial diversity and in some ways cultural diversity, and it's they would be against that anyway, and promote just the majority culture, and ultimately take away rights of certain races, and that's the illiberal end of things, whereas liberalism believes in pluralism, which is diversity.
yeah, absolutely. That is a fantastic answer. So here's what happened during those 16 years of Orban's rule from 2010 onward. So NGOs. So basically, you're talking about government, non-government organizations, and often international organizations that do humanitarian work were basically booted out of the country or are hugely restricted to do any kind of, and they were labeled as foreign agents, which is really interesting, right?
Oh, wait,
Go ahead.
can you tell us what an NGO is?
An NGO is a NGOs are big not for profit organizations. Often they often do humanitarian work.
And,
You know,
and in this case, you're talking about foreign ones, like so.
yeah.
So for yeah,
For
they
example, there
cleared
are.
out all the.
Right.
Go ahead.
For example, there are NGOs that will go into countries and they'll work with the local people on agricultural, basically helping them set up an agricultural cooperative. For
Right.
example, this is like going
Hmm.
back to my experience when I lived in El Salvador,
Right.
and there are NGOs that'll go into a country and they'll basically assist in the country to get an election going. They'll
Okay.
they'll
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
they'll There's all kinds of different parts of the
Yep.
NGO piece, but
Or to
basically
get free market capitalism going, or
right. And
yeah.
the reason I bring up NGOs in Hungary, of course, is because in Viktor Orban's 16-year run, elections become so greatly gerrymandered that NGOs that are basically fighting for liberal democracy are in the country trying to educate people, trying to help people sort of understand that they still have rights. And of course, they're labeled foreign agents and they're kicked out of the country or they're jailed. Various things happen. And very similar to what was going on in Russia at the time as well.
Right.
Academia, we're talking about universities. Now, Tim, I think an entire university had to leave the country in
Right.
Hungary during that
Yep.
16-year period, right?
Yep.
Incredible. They just packed up and we're out. Can you
Right.
imagine Harvard or Yale or something packing up and I
Right.
don't think it's even conceivable to us that, but they literally
Right.
had to go. It was called the Central European University. It's forced out of the country, right?
Hmm.
Also, many other university and post-secondary institutions were basically taken over by the government, right?
Right.
Taken over by the state. And culture wars, which of course we're used to this. This is going on during the 16-year period. Under the guise, I'll read this quote, under the guise of child protection, the government passed legislation banning the portrayal of LGBTQ2S plus issues to minors, and we're targeting LGBTQ plus rights and
Right.
rejecting, as you correctly pointed out, pluralism, diversity,
Right.
completely rejected. Right. Also, consolidation of economic power. What are we talking about? Oligarchy. We're talking about
Right.
crony capitalism,
Right.
where you've got X people are now in charge of X corporations. This should also sound familiar to us as well.
Right.
And there's a consolidation. There's a big, huge consolidation of power and wealth and resources within certain individuals, certain corporations that are connected to the state. And this is all going on during this 16-year period. Okay, whew, I think I got to take a breath on that. That's like a whole. That's a mouthful. So you're talking basically during that 16-year period. Once Orban was able to change the constitution and he was able to get a hold of the courts, then he was really able to start to ban things like free speech
Right.
and free media and freedom of association and to some degree freedom of movement, right? It's always
Yeah.
interesting to me that the authoritarians are terrified of free speech
Right.
and they get into the whole book banning and all the rest of that business too. They're just absolutely they're terrified. So this is what's going on during this period. Now the Hungarian people are there's an opposition, of course, but the opposition is very, very limited in its ability to get its message out.
In other words, people are arrested
Yeah.
sometimes for being against the government.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Journalists are jailed. If you go to a rally, the secret police are running around checking on things. The state is used again as an instrument of violence against the people that are just
Yeah.
really exercising civil liberties. So this is going on in Hungary during the 16-year period. So where do we go from there? My goodness. So that's where
Right.
what was lost. So how the heck did Viktor Orban, with all this power and all this control over this country and his party Fidesz, how did they lose this election that took place just last Sunday? How did this
Right.
even? How did this even? I mean, it just
With all that power.
right. So he's got all this power, but what happened? Well, here's the deal. The thing is that Viktor Orban, he's as the populist, he was no longer popular in the country.
Right.
He didn't have this huge wave of kind of popularity. And I mean, the other thing I did not mention, and wrong for me to do so, so I'm going to correct myself on this one too, is he ran a huge anti-immigrant campaign, of course,
Oh, right,
and fenced in his country, and he blamed immigrants for every positive, every ill that was going on in the country. And I also say that then he tied that, he sort of wove that together with this idea that we are going to remain Hungarian, and
right,
meaning that we're going to reject pluralism. This is what a Hungarian should look like, should sound like, should do. And
right.
I think he basically said the best migrants are the migrants who don't come to our country or stay away. I think he also was quoted as saying migration is poison. So he used violent words against people that were in the country, many who were on labor contracts that were there legally, and the rest of that. So this is also going on during this time. Jump in, Tim.
Thanks. So you might remember that we mentioned Christian nationalism, ethnic nationalism, and the, that ties into the anti-immigration, and it skirts um, uh, racial nationalism, right? Although not coming right out, well, sometimes really getting close, right? When you say poisons the country, right?
Yep.
That's similar to the language that racist have used in the past, right?
Yeah.
In suggesting that the race would be poisoned. So so yeah, it's all the nationalism. There are good elements of nationalism, but
Yeah.
it's kind of a spectrum, right? The nationalism that encourages us to work together and pay our taxes and follow the rules is a and embrace liberal democracy, right? That was nationalism, as you know, was used after the French Revolution and during the French Revolution to be against the monarchy and for a republic, for liberal democracy, and then it went to the evil side of the force, right?
Right.
And
So
and
So this is a perfect segue to talk about the now leader of Hungary, or the president-elect of Hungary, is
yep,
waiting to. I believe he'll go into office in May. His name is Peter. His name is Peter Modar. There's a number of ways to pronounce that, but again, with my Hungarian friends, they
right,
said this is the way to do it. So I'm doing my best. But
yep,
basically, during the campaign, you imagine again, he's got very limited access to media
yep,
coverage, and the media coverage he gets from the state media is about all these bad things that he's done in his family and the rest of it. And I will mention that Moder was part of the Fidesz party. That's Orban's party. So he was
mhm,
part of that party, and then he left that party. And one of the reasons he left that party was that Orban pardoned a child sex offender, an abuser, a
yep,
pedophile. He pardoned him, and it crossed such. There were a number of lines he's talked about in interviews with him, a number of lines that were crossed for him, and then he went out on his own, and he formed,
yep,
he began to form his own party known as TISA, right? In that,
right.
so
Tisa,
the thing about Peter Megard, it's also interesting to note, is that he's a conservative. He's
right,
center right. We're not talking about somebody who ran a socialist campaign or a left campaign. So
right.
this is a center right politician who was part of Orban's party, goes out on his own, and now how does he do it? With very little media backing. Go ahead.
Wait, I'm just a friendly amendment, right,
Yeah,
to what you just said about what he stands for, right? People
yeah,
might be thinking, well, if he's conservative, how is he different from Orban?
exactly. So,
Um,
well, it's interesting. His conservatism includes a number of things. His conservatism includes a free media.
right, there we go.
His
So the
Right.
liberal part of liberal
Right. It's
democracy,
coming.
right?
Oh, yeah. It's all coming, Tim. His
Yeah,
conservative
right.
all lines up with journalists being able to, using excellent journalistic techniques to cover the issues of the day and to promote a debate
Yep.
without coercion.
So
We're
just to
going to.
simplify it a little bit, right?
I know.
Under the old political continuum, or more recent, right, is
Yeah.
left with socialism, more government involved in the economy,
Yeah.
and right being more libertarian and more corporation or free market and less union, that kind of thing. Nationalism, and populism. is a whole nother ball of wax, and that's the difference between Orban and I'm sorry,
Modar.
Modar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Peter
Um,
Modar.
yeah, I mean, under the old system, the people on the right, and just to make sure that I get this
Yeah.
right, um, that were libertarian and pro free market, separation between church and state, but family values. Those um, Bush Republicans or Romney, right, are
Yeah.
very much for liberal democracy and on the right,
And they're
and
conservative.
they're conservative, um, and under particularly under the old terminology. And it seems to me, um, for this discussion, that Tisa and or sorry, Modar,
Yes.
um, because he's for liberal democracy, that's his big distinction.
A huge distinction. Yeah, you know what? And I'll quickly run through the things that have happened. He made a speech today, basically saying all of these people that were political appointees that were loyalists to Orban, who are connected to all kinds of corruption. We'll get into that in a moment. He said, "Resign now." Talking Supreme Court, all these people in these courts, you
Right.
need to resign. You're going to be under investigation for massive corruption, right? And
Yeah.
you could flip this and say, well, he's just going after his political opponents and the rest of that too. But what we're talking about, we're talking about justices who have jailed people without due process.
Right.
We're
Right.
talking, yeah, we're talking about. So another thing interesting about Peter Modar is that during the campaign, again, he lacks a lot of media coverage, but
Right. So how do you do it? Yeah.
he drives around in a pickup truck. He drives down in a pickup truck everywhere with Hungarian kind of colors on the pickup truck. And
Right.
he's always apparently at every campaign rally surrounded by Hungarian flags. And I think the message is that that patriotism does not belong to the far right.
Right.
And I think that's a crucial lesson for the West. You know,
Yes.
when facing these, we facing these dictator like or people that aspire to be dictators that
Right.
wrap themselves in the flag of your country, and then seem like they somehow own patriotism and are telling you how to be a patriot, which
Right.
ironically means they're not allowing you the freedom to be patriotic in your way,
Right.
right? On
And the point that you're making, again, ties up nicely with what we were talking about before about ethnic nationalism and Christian nationalism. Um, is not necessarily patriotism, right? There's a civic patriotism. Whereas if you believe in liberal government, if you believe in democracy, if you believe in rights and due process, you are a patriot.
exactly.
You and particularly in America, it's not your culture, it's your belief in liberal democracy that makes you proud to be an American. And 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 that just reinforces what you're saying, that we need to make sure that we take back patriotism, not the squirrely ethnic Christian,
Right.
ethnic Christian, shady, perhaps racist nationalism, but the civic nationalism, the liberal democracy nationalism.
Tim, that I don't think that could be better said. You're getting fired up, which is good
Yeah,
because
good.
we need to get fired up now.
Yeah, we
Now,
do.
I will say about Modar is that he avoided the Pride parade
Right.
in Hungary,
Yep.
and so and he hasn't talked much about LGBT to S plus rights. I think he's more on the conservative end on that front. But
Right.
says he does believe that people have that people have civil liberties that extend to relationships. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out in everything
Right.
that goes on. Now so he kind of is low profile in some of those things, and one of the reasons I brought that up is that not that I like that. I would prefer for him to have been in
Right.
the Pride Parade,
Yeah. To
absolutely.
make it clear. Right.
It would
Yeah.
have been very clear where he stands.
Right.
But
But considering where they were.
he pulled together a coalition. He had a big, huge tent, a broad tent of Hungarians supporting
Mhm.
him. on
Hmm.
anti-corruption issues, which you've basically got the concentration of wealth into the hands of the very few. Again, this sounds very familiar here in
Oligarchs.
North
Yep.
America, right? You've got corporate oligarchs, or I'm not just inventing that term. I don't know if it's a real term or not, but
Sounds right. And
just
the techno bros and all that,
techno
right?
bros and all the rest of these guys too. So he pulls this broad coalition together of liberals, of folks perhaps from the LGBT community, from people that want freedom of the press, people that want civil liberties, people that just look at the sheer economic issues and say, man, we're not getting anywhere as Hungarians. And part of it is because the wealth is in the hands of the few. The wealth
Right.
is in the hands of these corporate interests. And then he wraps himself in the Hungarian flag and says, this is actually what patriotism is, right?
Right.
So, he has a landslide win.
Right.
It
Right.
just, basically a
Even though he
super,
didn't have the
super
media
majority.
with him or anything, you know?
Very little media coverage, except
Yep.
super negative media coverage. He has a landslide win,
Yep.
which it will work out to a super majority. He's already addressed the justices, Supreme Court justices, and people that he feels that were completely ill qualified to be put in the roles. The only
Right.
reason they were put in key governmental roles was simply because they were loyalists
Pro
to Orban.
Orban.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they were absolute loyalists to Orban. He went on their state TV because Orban's still technically in power until the transition happens over. But he went on their state TV, which would be akin, perhaps, to if Fox News became the state television network, and
Right.
there were no other networks that you could watch, right?
Right.
So he goes on the network, and he basically he addresses the attacks on his children, the attacks on his family, and then they deny it, of course,
By
and
that network. Yeah.
by that network. Yeah. And the person interviewing from the network is like, well, we didn't say that. He goes, nope, no. He goes, I've waited a long time to talk to you guys because I've never even been on your program, right? I
Right.
have a long time to have my say. And he basically says, listen, this is what you said about my family. So let's just get it out there. Let's stop denying it. So that the interviewer finally stopped. And then he says to her, he said, we will immediately shut down this factory of lies. Incredible.
Yep.
I thought to
Yes.
myself,
Get your resumes together. And
get your resumes together. I mean, if you want
yeah.
to go off and, as a state media outlet, and you're just going to spew a factory of lies and disinformation, and it's going to
Right.
be whack-a-mole, and the people can't figure out what's going on because they're getting all kinds of conflicting reports on different things. You know, basically, and I think about North America in that regard, about all the network news and the 24-hour news cycle, and then people saying, well, fake news this and fake news that, and spread disinformation. So he went for that. And then, of course, it was also revealed, this would be very interesting for our listeners, that Orban was allegedly using taxpayer funds, Hungarian taxpayer dollars, to support CPAC. Now, Tim, you're going to have to help me out with CPAC.
Right. So I'm not sure if I could do the acronym, but yeah, Conservative Political Action Committee, and they've gone full MAGA for the last 10 years, and it's before then it was a different incarnation, but they be tripping, right,
Yeah.
and they are an intellectual group, but then more so collect money to give to MAGA candidates, and they have an annual conference which gets a lot of hype, and so I think that's where to to accept money from an authoritarian nationalist government, if that's true, is really damning.
Apparently, CPAC was running campaign or running events in Hungary. I
Yeah.
didn't realize that they just run events all over the world. I mean, amazing
No,
fundraising.
they don't, but they did it this time because they loved Orban so much.
Incredible. So he was really seen. He was really seen as a model of how to get it done.
Right.
I mean, if you believe in a liberal democracy, a terrifying model of how to get it done, which is why we're talking
That's
about
why
this
we're
today.
excited about this election. Yeah.
That's why we're excited. Okay, so now we're going to go to our next area. It's called the Democracy Report Card or Stress Test.
Hmm.
What is the present state of democracy in the U.S. in this moment, and how
Well,
does it how
right.
does it yeah, and how does it compare to the illiberalism of Hungary? Tim, go ahead.
All right. So I took notes when you were describing what Orban did after he came to office in 2010,
Yeah, yeah,
and And so just kind of going down that list in no particular order, right?
Yeah.
Um, if you're looking for ways to frame this, right,
Yeah.
think of Stalin as an authoritarian to the extreme with no elections. Um, Orban's government, uh, very authoritarian, um, but um, a little less so, and then having elections,
Hmm.
and then where we want to be, right, where there's both elections and liberal rights, and and I I think under Trump, it's like Orban light. That that would be a way of thinking about it. So, for example, um, I don't know exactly how it worked where they would arrest protesters,
Yeah.
right, and not give due process,
Sure.
and it, it sounds like it was really bad,
Yeah, it was
um,
bad.
and 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 here in Minneapolis, it was really bad in January and February,
Yeah.
and uh, probably not to scale as Hungary, but as wicked for that innocent individuals whose rights and due process and personal liberty were taken away, and that happened to citizens as well
Yeah.
as so that's an example, right? The question is, how bad is the United States? Is it where it was? Well, it's out.
Okay. So
It's I was working toward. Yeah. So
we
individual
got some.
rights.
Yeah, I got some news from you from the Varieties of Democratic Institute in
Right.
Sweden, which is an NGO that
Right.
basically studies, its purpose is to study the health of liberal democracies around the world, and this is what they have to say about that.
Right.
Uh, I'll just kind of pull up their latest report on the United States, and it's right here. So what they have to say is that they're talking about autocracies and a great reversal. Sorry, I'm a little stalled out here, but I'll find it. There it is in
Yep.
focus. It's called autocratization in the United States. It says that
Authoritarian is, yeah.
Under
Sorry.
Trump's presidency, democracy in the U.S. has fallen back to the same level as 1965. That was a
Okay.
head turner.
Yep.
However, they said yet the situation is fundamentally different than during the civil rights era. This is like a question for another time, perhaps, but it's
Right.
interesting. I mean, immediate question is that in what ways is it different? There are some things that are very obvious, obviously.
Right.
So the second thing they said, President Trump's second term could be summarized as a rapid and aggressive
Right.
concentration of powers in the presidency, in the
Yep.
executive,
Hmm.
right? The speed of which American democracy is currently dismantled is unprecedented in modern history. It's another kind of general summary statement that they make.
Right.
Legislative constraints is the worst affected aspect of democracy is losing one third of its value in 2025 and reaching its lowest point in over 100 years. Now, what do you think they mean by legislative constraints?
I think just off the top of my head, there's the idea of checks and balances.
Yeah,
Oh, I see. I think now that I think about it, I think that what they're talking about is the legislature putting constraints on the executive.
it's exactly right. And
Yeah,
rule of
and
law.
that's almost non-existent in America under
Yeah.
Trump point two or
Right. It says
2.0.
now here's some good news. Some good news. It says electoral components of democracy remain stable for now.
Right.
And if we go back to what happened in Hungary briefly and Modar's victory, the reason that he was able to overturn Orban is they still had elections.
Yeah.
That somehow some of the mechanisms of the electoral process had, even though it had been greatly rigged and gerrymandered, they still could not um, overcome Viktor Orban's government could not overcome a massive surge in popular support for somebody who said, a new political leader has said enough. We
Right.
need the people have rights.
Yep.
They couldn't do it. So as long as you still have some kind of election mechanism, there
Yep.
is still hope, right?
Yeah.
In what goes on.
Yep.
Right. So that is from the Swedish, that is from the
Did they give it? Did they give us a ranking?
Yeah, the ranking is somewhere. I think it's 45 in the world now,
Okay.
but it's been sinking. But anyway,
Yeah, right. Out of 180.
that's right. It
So
used to be number six.
right, that's where yeah we. So just to keep things moving along. You talked about how Orban went after the universities, and the university fled,
Yep.
and it hasn't been to that extreme, but the Trump administration has gone after universities by basically finding them if they don't change the curriculum towards what they wanted,
Yeah.
and so again, it's this. A lot of times what you and I and others who really believe in liberal democracy do is we see something that is wrong that isn't as bad as Stalin, but
Yeah.
we know that it leads towards it, right?
Yes.
And so that would be one example where it's not as bad as Orban, but them trying to control the curriculum in universities is serious. Culture wars have been going on since 1992 ish, or since the beginning of the country, but in particular the rise of the prominence of culture wars and
Oh,
culture as a political issue
yeah.
has definitely been
Yes.
happening here.
Yeah.
And
Continued suppression of people of color, continued suppression
right,
of pluralism of the people in the LGBTQ2S communities,
right,
rights for women.
right,
All
yep.
kinds of rights for women in there as well. Right.
And so
So
that has to do with the pluralism and diversity and nationalism, in the sense that nationalists want only the majority culture. Um,
absolutely.
yeah. And
What about
so
freedom of
there
the
are a
press?
lot. Yeah, freedom of the press.
I would,
Many of us remember how, well, basically, the White House is encouraging his cronies to buy up media stations.
yeah.
They put pressure on the comedian that set
Jimmy Kimmel.
Jimmy Kimmel, and almost got him bounced just
Yeah.
for using some regular
Satire.
um, satire, right? And thank you. And so again, that is serious because of where it could go. And under Orban, it was government control of the media. Um, so that affects freedom of speech, and the right to the right to congregate.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Freedom of assembly.
yeah, I talked about when I talked about Minneapolis, I talked about lack of due process and rights being taken away, and that's happening in many different ways as well. And so we aren't where we should be, right?
No.
I want to be number one, but I'll take six, right?
Yeah.
Not what
I would.
48 or 64 or whatever you said, right?
I
And
would take six.
yeah, and
Absolutely. So if I go through this list,
it's not like and I know you agree with this.
yeah.
It's not typical. I'm left of center, and I want my policies, and I want to act them or right, or
Yeah.
it's not the typical. We need to do this because of da da da. It's even more important. It's like it's the operating system,
So
right? And if
I
and
would
if you
agree.
have a messed up operating system, right, which the direction we're going, everything else is unfair.
Yeah.
And you know what? Sometimes uh, liberals are attacked by defending fairness too much, which
Yeah.
I can't believe is true, but it is. I've been reading the new rights material,
Yeah. Yeah.
and my answer to that is justice,
Absolutely.
right? If you That is what we say when we want fairness,
Yeah.
justice,
Yeah.
liberty and justice for all.
Yeah, no, there's a saying in El Salvador, where there have been many popular uprising, and it says basically in Spanish, "Quieres la paz, then
Yeah,
lucha por justicia." If you want peace, then you got to fight for justice. You got to
right,
get out. You got to protest. I mean, if I look at all these things that were under attack in the 16 years of Viktor Orban, freedom of the press, rule of law and judicial independence, civil society, a plural society, and academic freedom, free and fair elections, public education. All of these things are under attack in the U.S. But it took 16 years in Hungary for it to fully get all clamped down. Although some areas got clamped down more quickly than others in Hungary when that
Right.
took place. So all of these areas are under threat. However, the institutions and the people in the United States, um, they're not all of like mind, right? With folks that would like to, with perhaps the MAGA group or whatever that would like to, make these great changes. I mean, if you think about what brought Peter Magyar his victory in Hungary was, again, he had a big tent. There
Right.
were many different many people that were involved, and this kind of takes us to where we are now.
Right.
So where are we right now? Of all these things, what do you think is most kind of pressing in the United States or most pressing in American democracy, Tim? And this
Right.
is our
Well,
opinion, of course.
right. Yeah. There's many. There's a multitude of points of view. Right. Um, but we've been around the block a little bit too. Right. And we can see some things. Um, So, yeah, so I, 3 months ago, I was really, and I still am really concerned about whether we can do this, whether we could, the 2024 reelection of President Trump was really scary, and just watching him do the stuff that he was doing was so disheartening, and um, and I feel like there's a little bit more hope, and hope is important, right? And um, I'm told that different parts of the United States and around the world were inspired by people like my sister, who went and documented what was happening by the ICE and the Border Patrol, and how they were basically thugs, right? And and the worst image that we have of government secret agents, secret police taking people away,
Yeah,
and and but the strength of the citizens here made us realize, it's, we did a thing on the civil rights movement and protests in general,
yeah,
and again, if you hold up a mirror to the people who are being unjust, right,
yeah,
unfair, wrong, and you show them their anger, right, using the mirror, if you're peaceful, you can change the hearts of those people, and at a minimum you can change the hearts of the people who are on the fence,
yeah.
and so that gives me hope for America going forward, to turning the page, and
Tim,
um,
do you feel like do you feel like that in when you were in No Kings and we talked about how it's a coalition?
right, yeah, thanks. um, so both of us have been students and teachers of the fascist movements of the 1920s and 30s in Europe,
Yeah,
and the mistake that their opposition made sometimes is not uniting against the fascists before they were elected, and so it was really refreshing to see at the No Kings here in Minnesota, um, uh, people are united against ending Trump, and more importantly, ending illiberalism. It's a hard one, um,
yeah,
and fighting for liberal democracy, wherever you stand. And this is what I was talking about just a little bit ago, right? We all agree on this, and this is so important. And then once we get this fixed, then we can, go back to some of our other disagreements and compromises. And that's what I saw. That gave me hope, was the positivity of seeing other people in person, and and the fact that there was so much unity. And I understand there were a lot of these No King protests in in red states, and red areas of blue states, and
yeah,
so it's really encouraging. And there is basically, if you want to win elections, and I'm saying this is someone who's worked on a Senate campaign, a mayoral campaign, a presidential campaign. Um, if you want to win elections, if you want to win presidential elections,
Yeah.
right? You, you want to be able to say to your voters, um, for reelection, um, I brought peace and prosperity,
Yeah.
and um, the mistake that this administration made with attacking Iran basically broke the two main promises that he gave about no more forever wars
Yeah.
and lower prices,
Yeah.
and so so it's hard to like take that as hope or victory or
Right.
whatever, because war is really really so horrible.
Right.
um um but and through the last 10 years there's been moments where I thought the worm has turned, or the fever is
Yeah.
broken or whatever. But I feel that the most right now than I have over these 10 years. And
Yeah.
so we'll see. To the extent that we need hope to keep pressing, right?
Right. Yeah.
Hope all the way. If hope is making us what's the word when you're not trying anymore,
Despair.
complacent.
Despair.
Complacent would be
Right.
the
Yeah.
match that I'm looking for. If there's
Yeah.
so much hope that we're complacent,
Right.
right? But
Oh, gotcha, gotcha. Okay, yeah,
yeah,
if
yeah,
just that we're kind of we can't basically you're saying we can't get complacent.
right.
We can't allow ourselves to get complacent. Do you feel like
But
you feel like there's a
keep hope alive.
yeah, and you know what? I feel like there's change in the air too. So when you think about the Republican Party, Tim,
Right.
do you believe that we're in a fork in the road? Because I'll go back. Just before you get into it, I'll go back to Peter Modar again. If you're going to overturn an authoritarian, um, who's a populist, who's no
Hmm.
longer popular because of corruption issues are brought to the forefront, and affordability, and lost civil liberties in these things, they
Yep.
can be overturned. So Trump's had a whole huge hold on the Republican Party. Is there are we at a fork in the road in that place?
Yeah. This brings up two things that I was going to talk about, and one of them is this first one is tangentially answering your question, but I want to make sure I get it in right.
Yeah.
Um, so over the last year, there's on the Democratic side, there's been sometimes a debate between whether it was right for the nominee in 2024 to talk about saving democracy, or
Yeah.
whether it would have been better to talk about economic justice, right? And um, and I think that Modar,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, by attacking Orban about the corruption and having success on corruption. I'm not sure if this is right, but I want to keep this out in the discussion, because there's people out there that should that know better than I do about in particular blue collar politics, right?
Yeah.
Um, the theory is that by pointing out the corruption of Orban
Yeah.
or of Trump,
Yeah.
that you're able to to um, talk about democracy, right? There's
Yeah.
corruption because of the authoritarian tendencies, and talk about economy because it really rubs you the wrong way when you're having problems buying eggs or gas,
Right.
and you see millions of dollars going to Trump supporters. So perhaps there's a way to square that circle of economy versus democracy by pointing out the corruption on the other side. And when you really it's hard for me to like be that really tough political
Yeah.
person, but
Yeah.
you have to be, right, in order to win elections. And the way to really hammer this then would be to just bring them up next to each other. Do you get millions of dollars, or are you struggling to pay for the gas? Are you
Yeah. Yeah.
so and so got such and such sweetheart deal? Do you get those sweetheart deals?
It's almost like
and
bringing it home, right? Bringing it home for
yeah,
people.
yeah, it's a, and if you're going to be us and them, us versus them, politics, right? You flip it, and
Yeah.
and that's just, yeah, we can't afford to lose.
Yeah. And we're not putting Modar on a pedestal.
Right.
I
Thank
I
you.
don't think he doesn't line up. He doesn't line up with a number of things that I believe. But what he does line up with for me is that political systems should not be under the kind of the rigged authority of the oligarchs, right?
Right. Right. Right.
Absolutely, and then be presented as democracies of some kind when they're really no longer democratic
Right.
in a way they operate. And I liked what you said before, Tim, about like the operating system.
Right.
When that system, when that system that's there, that system of corruption, that system of kind of
Authoritarian.
oligarchy
Yep.
and and the cult like
Yep.
hold that it has on a certain people, that can be overturned, right?
Right. Going after it is what you're suggesting, right? And that's again,
Absolutely.
whether it's
Pointing it out.
corruption or injustice, right? And really, that's the tie between. Um, so the Democratic coalition is a lot of things,
Yeah.
including white blue collar workers,
Right.
women, minorities,
Yeah.
and 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 I I argue that if you include Bernie Sanders with the call for racial
Right.
and gender equality, right?
Right. Yeah.
Um, the basically the argument is let's stick it to the man.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree. I was also going to throw in there too. The Big Tent should also include conservatives.
Right. Well, yeah, and that's the interesting thing is that
This is not really
right,
a political party issue anymore.
right,
Yeah, it's not a political party issue in any way for me.
right.
This issue is an issue of just fundamental civil liberties,
Yep.
right? And part
And
of
that
that is,
that helps me get to the other answer to your question.
yeah,
Sorry.
no worries.
Um, um, and that has shoot. Um, and-
Well,
oh, Republicans and yeah. I mean, I think that yeah, having the Big Ten, right? Like we were talking about
yeah,
with the No Kings,
yeah.
includes everybody.
I agree too.
Yep.
It absolutely, and that's what Peter Mordaunt did in Hungary.
Yep.
He had a huge tent,
Yep.
right? And so you're at No Kings, and you realize the people that are marching in No Kings, they believe different things. But
Yep.
what do they have in common? What do they believe in common? And again, they believe in common that freedom, as a definition, is not just beholden to the far right.
Right.
That freedom
Bam.
Right. It's not beholden to one group
Right.
who are going to tell people what to say and how to think, and that everybody's got to march the same way. Otherwise, you're not patriotic. You're not part of what's going on, right? That goes on up here too. It's the same
Right.
kind of same kind of thing. We get politicians who are all telling everybody, well, you're not really Canadian like unless you believe in these things. And for
Right.
me, you know, I believe that to be Canadian is to be plural,
Right.
diversity,
Right.
right?
Right.
Diversity and and basically rule of law and a judiciary
Exactly.
system, which is separate from the state. All the very things
Right.
that Peter Modar, we'll see what he does, is
Right.
pledging to completely return back to pre 2010 conditions, so they can be more like an emerging democracy that came out of the Soviet bloc. And
Right.
in the American situation now, it's characterized as backsliding. So yeah, there's all this backsliding going on, but I agree with you. We're
We can
changes
do
in
it.
the air.
Yeah.
Changes in the air because Trump is no longer it does his popularity is eroded to the point where people are going to come together. And again, it's not going to be about political parties, right?
Right.
It's going to
Right.
be people coming together for what? What values? And freedom as defined in what way?
Liberty. Right. Rights Liberty, consent to the governed.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Couldn't be better said, Tim.
Yeah. Well, let's spread the word.
Let's let's do it. We took on a topic. Had to educate ourselves a little bit on this,
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
say the least. A lot of reading and kind of looking around and thinking about things. What I like about what we did today, Tim, is that the commonalities between what the Hungarian people in that big tent were
Yep.
fighting for, and what and what American people are fighting for, and Canadian people are fighting for too.
Right.
Everyone has a place in that big tent, and a place of respect. So this has been wonderful. I really appreciate doing this with you, Tim.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. If those of you who see us, uh, we appreciate your support. Subscribe, like button. Um, uh, we believe in what we're doing, and we hope that you do too. And if you can, help us out. Um, and and I'll see you next week.
All right, take care, everyone. All right, happy
Thanks.
spring, happy springtime, everyone.
Right.
Take care.
Bye.